Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dina Tharp. I'm the Executive Director of Down Syndrome Affiliates in Action, and we're excited to bring you this webinar today in partnership with the National Down Syndrome Congress. We love to partner with NDSC, and we're excited that our presenters today, Heather Sachs, who is the Policy and Advocacy Director, and Lauren Camp, who is the Policy and Advocacy Associate. Also, by the way, I should mention, she's the Executive Director of Down Syndrome Association of Delaware and a DSAIA board member. So, and among her many other things that she does, she's young, so she can do those things. So she can load her plate like that. We're proud to have them both presenting today. And as like I was saying, Heather Sachs will also be presenting at our conference at DSAIA 2019, which is in St. Louis coming up in the end of February, first weekend of March. So we're excited to have them doing this webinar for us today. This webinar will also go into the DSAIA resource library, which we call Stacks, and it'll be available to our members, and we'll also make it available publicly as we go along, and it'll be available through NDSC. So we appreciate everyone joining us today. I'm so excited to have our speakers and to be partnering with NDSC once again to do this webinar. And so I am actually going to turn it over to Tamara Persley from NDSC and let her say a few words before we get started.
Thank you, Dina. And again, we are excited at the NDSC to be partnering with DSAIA to bring you this webinar today. We have the best policy and advocacy team in the country that's working hard for you in Washington because you can't always be there. And we're excited to also be coming to DSAIA in St. Louis. And in addition to Heather presenting, I'll be there on the exhibit floor, and I hope I get to connect with all of you while I'm there. I am the Programs and Partnerships Director here at the NDSC, and I hope that you've all marked your calendars for our next annual convention as we are headed to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, June 27th through 30th. Registration will open at the end of March. And I think this is going to be one of our best ever. So I hope to see you all there. So at this time, I will turn it over to Heather and Lauren. Take it away.
Thanks, Gina and Tamara. This is Heather Sachs speaking. As you can see on the slides, a nice picture of Lauren and myself. She's a lot younger than I am. But we work very, very well together. Both of us do wear or have worn several different hats, as Gina explained. Lauren is currently the Executive Director of the Down Syndrome Association of Delaware, and her group does quite a bit of advocacy that she'll talk to you about toward the end of this presentation. She also works with me in the Policy and Advocacy Center of NDSC. I'm the director of the Policy Center, but also the former advocacy chair, longtime advocacy chair for my local Down syndrome group in Maryland, the Down Syndrome Network of Montgomery County. So it's with this experience that we talk to you about, how and why your group should advocate. Let's go to the next page and I'll talk about the agenda. I usually talk about policy. Today is not going to be about policy. It's all going to be about just advocacy in general, how you can advocate as an individual and as a group, how can and why should your nonprofit organization become engaged in advocacy. I know there's always a lot of hesitation and nervousness regarding this topic, so I'm happy to provide you some details about the parameters. I'm going to talk about the differences between advocacy and lobbying and what exactly your nonprofit can legally do. Here's a hint, they can actually do both, and I'll get to that in a minute. As I said, Lauren will jump in and talk specifically about her Down syndrome group of Delaware and provide some examples of how they've managed to make advocacy one of their top priorities and have really jumped in and formed great relationships with their state and federal legislators on that. And then Lauren will also speak about how you and your group can become involved in the NDSC Grassroots program, which is called NDAC, the National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. So let's go to what is advocacy. And I know there's a lot of text on these slides that's designed on purpose so you can share them with other members of your board. And other folks within your organization who are interested in advocacy, particularly those board members that are a little nervous and say, well, we're a 501c3. I don't think that we should be doing anything in this realm. That's absolutely not true. And I think hopefully if I've done my job by the end of this webinar, you'll realize that there really is a lot that you can and should be doing. So advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. We always hear the term grassroots advocacy. What is that? It's actually action by ordinary citizens to affect change. It can happen at the local level, the state level, the federal level. It's really telling your personal story to turn what is the status quo, what's wrong with that, how do we want to improve that, into what should be, putting a real face on the issues. A lot of advocacy is really just educating, providing education and information to elected officials and to the broader community about certain issues, problems, and concerns, particularly impacting you and your group members. I always say, we have this amazing opportunity now. There are over 100 new members of Congress, brand new, and many of them don't have much experience with our policy issues. And so part of our job as advocates and as affiliate leaders and as the policy team for NDSC is to just educate them on the issues and why these issues are important to us. And so I will definitely give you some tips on how you can do that. Advocacy and lobbying is often used interchangeably. They're absolutely not interchangeable. Lobbying, though, is a part of advocacy efforts, but advocacy is the overarching term for the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. And I always say that, I'm a parent of a teenager with Down syndrome, and I always say that from the moment that our loved one with Down syndrome is born or we get that diagnosis, we immediately become an advocate, whether you're intending to or not. You may not even realize it, but from that first, discussion you have with your doctors and then, going through early intervention and going to school and you are advocating, maybe not doing legislative advocacy, but you certainly are, making your case, putting your, passion and knowledge into trying to change people's minds and trying to make a difference. So you already are advocates, but hopefully you will become more comfortable with saying that you are and also bringing your group into the advocacy fold. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So before I talk about how groups can advocate, I just wanted to briefly speak about how we can advocate as individuals. The next few slides, I've listed out, some specific ideas for you to advocate. And when I say you, I mean, as a group leader, or a board member, as a parent or caregiver, or, just a support person, as a friend, as a neighbor, anyone that you care about, you can become an advocate for. And the most important type of advocacy is self-advocacy, which I will talk about as well. But advocacy really goes on a continuum. I fully recognize that we all have a lot on our plates. Things change from day to day, and sometimes we just don't have time to do much in the advocacy or volunteer space. We're just trying to get through the day and make sure our kids are fed and healthy and happy. And there's a lot that you can do, though, that is very, very little time consuming. What we like to refer to it as armchair advocacy. One thing is to just keep informed. There's a lot of groups such as NDSC, and then I've listed some other ones on the slide, such as the ARC and National Disability Rights and AUCD, that have monthly or even weekly newsletters specifically from their policy teams that, will talk about, certain issues that are coming before Congress, or what's going on in Washington, or even your state ARCs and state groups often have, will push out e-newsletters about what's going on in your state capital. So it's really important. I know we all get a lot of spam and our email boxes are clogged, but please, when you get a chance, go into some of those websites of, local and national organizations and sign up for their e-newsletters. Often there's a separate newsletter under the policy section on their website. So, that you can do at any time, from your phone, any device. There's also some publications. One of them is Disability Scoop. Forbes covers a lot of disability issues. Wall Street Journal, Washington Post. At NDSC, we really, when articles come out regarding issues, priority policy issues that we're working on, we try to push them out on Facebook. And I'll talk about social media in a minute. But you can keep up with that. Google Alerts, I find that very, very helpful. If there's a particular issue that you're really interested in or that you're working on the local level, or state or national, just put it in an alert. And then every day you'll get an email with a digest that has, kind of all the stories around the country that mention that term. Some of them are way off and completely irrelevant, but there is some interesting tidbits that you can find there. So that's keeping yourself informed. The next step up, and again, this really should not take that long because we give you all the tools that you need, is to make calls. We have action alerts that you can sign up for when there is an issue going on, especially in Congress. We put out the call to make calls, and we'll send you an alert. You sign up. Lauren can talk a little bit more about signing up for our alert system. We give you everything you need. I mean, literally the talking points. You can click through our software and, send an email to your elected official. We give you the phone number. These calls generally take about 1 to 2 minutes, and they are so critically important because often it's a numbers game when staff is, trying to decide how to advise their member of Congress, how to vote on a particular issue. They actually will say, we got X number of calls for this issue and X number of calls against this issue. So those calls and emails really, really do matter. Let's go to the next page. Okay, so social media can be friend or foe. I think we all know that. It's a great tool for advocacy, so long as you maintain a professional tone and go into it realizing that obviously things you put on social media are there forever. In order to engage on social media, you will I would recommend that you follow, and friend your elected officials. Whether you voted for them or not, they represent you. And so in order to, interact with them and tag them on social media, you need to friend them and follow them. We found that most congressional staff, at least, is really using Twitter. And so, they're managing their bosses' Twitter accounts. And so when, if you want to tag them on Twitter and use the handle, that would be great to do that. There are also quite a few advocacy-related Facebook groups that have sprung up. One of them was founded by our good friend Jawanda Mast, and it's 321 Advocate. It's for parents and siblings of children with Down syndrome, and also individuals with Down syndrome, so self-advocates and families. I think it has almost 700 members now from across the country. It's very, very active. There are a lot of other advocacy-related Facebook groups that deal with specific issues, such as inclusion for children with Down syndrome. Again, depending on, where you are, with your child and what issues you really focus on, I encourage you to seek those out. Even if you're not going to post anything, you can really just learn a lot by reading other folks' posts and see what's going on around the country. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so again, we're talking now, these on the continuum are a little bit more, time intensive, effort intensive, but you can do them. And at NDSC, we're happy to provide support to you however we can as well. If you're thinking of doing this, writing your story. Advocacy is all about telling your personal story. So writing op-eds, letters to the editor and local papers. There's certain, blogs and online publications like The Mighty, which will publish stories. Those are really important ways to advocate. Testifying, and I'll talk about this in a few more slides too when I talk about sort of your responsibility as the head of your group. But testifying, submitting written or oral testimony at school board meetings, at your state legislature, to administrative agencies. You're not going to get to testify in front of Congress. It's very, very difficult to do that, but you can certainly testify at the local level. And again, advocacy, effective advocacy is really putting that, real face and real words to an issue. I'm also doing meetings, and Lauren's going to talk about this a little bit about how her group does this, but establishing a relationship with your elected official and staff. I know it's exciting to go to DC, and we'll talk about some training opportunities coming up, but Every member of Congress has a local office in your district, and every state senator has multiple offices around the state. So I would highly recommend, making meetings at your local office and talking to staff about your organization, about issues that are important to you, and keeping in touch with them. They love it. Holiday cards, sending photos, again, to really acknowledging them on social media and building that relationship. Let's go to the next slide. So when you are doing this, as I said, everything is permanent out in cyberspace, so we need to keep that in mind. We always want to make sure that we keep the conversations and public discussions respectful, even if you didn't vote for the person, even if you completely disagree with their stance. A good friend of mine, Kelly Reyes, always likes to say there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies, and that's absolutely true in advocacy. Your elected official that votes a way that you did not want them to vote on a particular issue could turn around in a month or two on another issue and become your strongest ally on a bill. So you really need to keep that in mind. Recognition always, as I said, whether you're tagging them, putting pictures in your newsletters, and just recognizing them, thanking them for meeting with you. They love the public recognition. And then realizing the power of staff. Yes, it's exciting to meet with a member of Congress, but really it's the staff that has most of the power. Most members of Congress do not get deep in the weeds on these issues, and they go with, the way the staff advises them to do. So building those staff relationships are very important, and it's much easier to do with, your local legislators, your state and local elected officials, because those, their staff members likely are members of your community as well. So please build those relationships. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Oh, we're already there, actually. So how can your group advocate? So like with individual advocacy, there really is a continuum depending on interest, comfort level, staff, or volunteer capacity. We recognize that you have a lot on your plate, and often the executive director or the president of the board gets everything thrown on them, and it can be very, very overwhelming. I've been in that position before, and Lauren is currently in that position. So at the very, very least, if you do nothing else, if you have no other time or assistance to do any type of advocacy, just keep your members informed. We're not asking you to write anything original. All we're asking you to do is to share the NDSC e-newsletters called the Newsline, share our action alerts. I hope that you've liked our policy and NDSC policy and advocacy page on Facebook and Twitter. We'll get you the handles at the end of these slides. Retweet what we put out, repost. DSAIA is a great source for advocacy-related and policy-related information, as is NDSC. Both of our organizations have a lot of great webinars that you can listen to, and also just invite some policy experts to speak to your group. Where we can help you out, we will, or else perhaps we can identify a local person that's up on a particular issue to help you. As I said before, too, just developing a relationship with policymakers and staff is very, very important. And it's particularly important when you are the face of an organization, whether you're the leader or a board member. You want to establish a relationship as an individual, but also you want to be, the go-to person that they rely upon when they're running a, policy position by you, or want to get your thoughts on a certain matter. Attending meetings, as I said, on behalf of your organization is great. It's always great to say sort of how many members you have in your organization and what the geographic scope is. Even if you're not personally a constituent of the person that you're meeting with, if your organization's service area covers that district, then that's great. And you'll be sure to point that out. Send your organization's newsletters to your, to your local staff and legislators, particularly if you have an article in there thanking them for meeting with you or thanking them for, coming to one of your events. Please remember and also inviting them to big events would be great, whether it's your, Down syndrome awareness walk or some other public event. It's always nice to send an invitation to your elected officials and invite them to come and speak with the members. It's up to you whether or not you want to give them actual speaking time in front of the audience. If you do, I highly recommend, giving them a time limit, like 2 minutes in advance, so they don't go on and on. But just inviting them. Sometimes they really just jump at the opportunity to be there and to shake hands with their constituents and talk to them. Please, when you're doing this, always remember to be bipartisan, or actually nonpartisan would be better. But be very cognizant. If you're inviting a state legislator, Republican state legislator to give a talk to your group, also invite a Democratic counterpart. They may say no, they may not be able to come, but at least you could say you have extended the invitation to both, so there's no appearance that you're favoring one party over another. And then also, please, and we'll get into this a little bit more with the rules, but no endorsements of candidates. So, you can't do that as, you definitely cannot do that as a group leader. You shouldn't be doing that as an individual either. Okay, so let's go to the next page. So more ideas for group advocacy. As I said before, just as with individual advocacy, sharing and posting and tweeting and retweeting on social media. You don't even necessarily need to make comments, just retweet certain things. So we put out an article about, Medicaid, retweet it to your members, just so it tells them that you're paying attention to these issues, and also that you are, you think it's very important to keep them informed. I would highly recommend, and this is what we did through my local group many, many years ago, if you can find an advocacy point person who is not you, because you have so many other things on your plate as a leader. If you can find an advocacy point person, that would be great, whether you establish an advocacy committee or make it a chair position. This person would almost be like the liaison. We'll talk later about joining NDAC, but when a group joins NDAC, our Grassroots Advocacy Coalition, we always designate a group, member point of contact for that. So, that person would presumably be the point of contact to NDAC. We have a closed Facebook group. That person, would be the one sort of interfacing with the various different sources for advocacy, and setting the programming. So please consider, putting out your feelers and seeing if someone would be willing to take on that position. I would highly recommend, as I said before, most of our groups have some sort of Down syndrome awareness walk. Incorporating advocacy into that walk in some way or another. It can be anything from, circulating a petition on a certain issue, having letter writing campaigns, having an advocacy table with resources. Again, that advocacy point person or committee chair from your group would be the one to organize this. You don't even have to create your own resources. Reach out to us, to NDSC, to your local ARCs, to different groups, and ask them to just give you resources, just so you have information available for the members who are stopping by. Also, there's a real lot to be said for statewide advocacy. There are some great statewide Down syndrome specific coalitions out there. Those are some of the states that I listed that I know exist: California, Maryland, Texas, Tennessee, Michigan. I'm sure there are others. Most of these coalitions have, Facebook groups or listservs. You can join that as a way to both keep informed, but also, really make allies across the state and work together on certain initiatives. And please, please, please do not stay in the Down syndrome bubble. We always talk about the problem with this. NDSC works constantly with other disability groups on a national level. We think it is so important, and our voices are stronger together, and really on almost every issue we're aligned. There are very few Down syndrome specific issues. So please keep that in mind and reach out to your autism groups, your local DD council, your state protection and advocacy agency. That's usually like your disability rights network in the state. See what they're working on, see what their advocacy and policy agenda is. Many of them just have them posted on their websites, and see if there's some synergy with your group and if there's something that you can work together on or you can contribute to. In fact, a lot of them too have the DD days, developmental disability days, at the state legislature. That's actually, and Lauren can probably talk a little bit more about this as well, but that's a great way to, just get a group of your members to go And, you don't even have to take a leadership role in it. Just attend, go to the training, meet with your state legislators. And most of those are put on through, the DD Council and the state ARC. Let's go to the next slide. So some words of caution as you are, getting into the advocacy realm and pushing things out to your members. As I said, do not stay in the Down syndrome bubble. I think I've made that clear. Coalition work is so important. If something is affecting, even an article that you've come across, if something is affecting a student with autism, of course it could affect a student with Down syndrome in the same negative or positive way. So, please expand beyond just the Down syndrome. Also, there are a lot of different national groups. We work with a lot of national groups and also state groups. But do not assume that just because there's a national Down syndrome group or a national autism group that we all have the same policy agenda. It's sometimes it's kind of hard to dig deeper on the positions if we're all, if a lot of us are putting out alerts for certain things. You'll start to see that there are, some action alerts that will look the same. Usually ours will be the same as, or pretty similar to, the ARC and National Disability Rights. And that's not necessarily the case for some other groups. So, just be careful and dig a little bit deeper if you're thinking of aligning or pushing out certain policy positions of other groups that maybe don't work as closely in coalition with some of the cross-disability groups. Also, I just wanted to caution that not all, national Down syndrome or other disability groups have the same depth of knowledge or expertise in policy. This can actually be quite dangerous. So if a group is, kind of going rogue, as I say it, working on their own, and going and, trying to push a bill through Congress, which sounds like the greatest idea ever, but they don't have expertise on the issue, it can actually create a lot of unintended and, very dangerous consequences. So feel free to, reach out to me and my policy team if you ever have any questions about, conflicting messages that you get. What usually happens is, as you'll sign up for different e-newsletters and get action alerts, there will be sort of a core group of groups that you rely on for messaging, and we're usually working together and on the same page. Let's go to the next page. All right, so why should, and also talking about cross-disability advocacy, as I said before. So these are some of the coalitions that NDSC is very active in. One of them in particular, the Consortium for Citizens with Disabilities. It's a group of over 100 national disability groups that, have come together. Usually we're on message on the same page as the other CCD members, and you'll start to see alerts from many of them. We also work very, very closely with the collaboration to promote self-determination on employment issues. So you'll see us reference that a lot. And here's some of our other coalitions as well. Let's go to the next slide. So we talked about how you can advocate as an individual and as a group. Now let's talk about why you should advocate as a group. And then I'll talk about how you can do this legally. So as advocacy from a group really does advance your organization's mission, especially in the nonprofit space. You can use opportunities to advocate to, broaden access to certain services. I know like reducing the waiting list in different states for the home and community-based services waiver is a really important cause that all local disability groups should get behind. Preventing loss of resources if, there's budget cuts going on, whether at your school board or on the state level. You need to get in there. You need to protect your organization's mission and fight for your, resources and services that your members need. It also increases visibility of your organization. Often will get media attention for it. It enhances visibility in the community. That could increase your donor base. It increases the engagement of members and board members as well. And it's always good too, as I said, especially for local and community-based advocacy. We all know someone. And so, the state delegate could be, your board treasurer's next door neighbor. And, so really kind of put your feelers out there for those type of relationships and work them. As a nonprofit, advocating allows you to solve and avoid problems. You have very special knowledge, and as a leader of a Down syndrome organization, you know more about Down syndrome and about the issues affecting your members than your local city council members. So, we talked before about educating them, that it's critical that, you step into that space to educate them about, what Down syndrome is, what our members need, what are the pressing issues, and really become the go-to voice for your community. We are experts in our field, just like I always say, you're an expert in your own child. Well, as an organizational leader, you are an expert in your own organization. And lawmakers will often want to know, what does the local Down syndrome community think about a particular proposal? They're not going to know unless you tell them, and you don't want them to guess because they could be wrong. So yes, establish those relationships and become the go-to voice. Let's talk a little bit about the power of self-advocates. We probably all know this already, but self-advocates are, people with Down syndrome, or, any other disability. In this context, we're talking about Down syndrome. They are the most effective advocates, whether they have traditional communication methods or alternate communication methods. When you have someone in there talking about how a policy will affect them personally, if you cut Medicaid, I will lose my services, and and healthcare, that really resonates. I also, I try to bring self-advocates to meetings as much as possible, and I notice that when there's a self-advocate in the room, it really elevates the level of respect in the meeting. As I said before, we all want to make sure that we're respectful and professional, but I have noticed that legislators, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, for the most part, will take extra time with you, extra time to get to know the self-advocate and to really hear their message. We don't want them to just be tokens, though. We want to engage them in all aspects of advocacy. If they don't feel comfortable speaking or, have a hard time doing that, they can just bring a one-pager about themselves to meetings. And if you want any examples of that, feel free to contact me offline. We have a lot of examples of different bios that a self-advocate can bring. Provide them as a group leader with the necessary tools and training so that they can meaningfully participate in advocacy. An example is my local group, DSNMC, provides public speaking workshops. They've partnered up with a local theater, and they do workshops for self-advocates. They actually have non-disabled peers working with them as well. And it's almost like a Toastmasters where they give, speeches about particular things. And when we have gone to Capitol Hill, we live in the DC area. So when we have gone there for advocacy, these workshops are a great opportunity for the self-advocates to work on their speeches and practice them before they get into the legislators' offices. So that, I think that's definitely an option. I know last year at the DSAIA conference, the folks from our local group who put on the public speaking workshops had done a presentation there. And so I'm sure you could always reach out to Dina too if you're interested in doing that to get some ideas and resources for that. Participation in advocacy trainings, conferences, Hill Days, and I'll talk a little bit more about specifics later. But these are really key. I know it costs a lot of money to, send board members and members to various conferences. If there's a self-advocate who is, interested and is taking a really active role in your organization, please find a way to fund them to go. It is just so important that we have self-advocates at the table in all of our organizations and, all of our decisions, that hold nothing about us without us. We really, really try to uphold that. Certain advocacy trainings are coming up. We'll talk a little bit about some opportunities at the NDSC convention. There's also in Washington, D.C., April 8th through 10th, the Disability Policy Seminar. This is a cross-disability training. It's a couple days of workshops and training, and then they go to the Hill. NDSC is a promotional partner this year. Other groups that are the main partners are the ARC and AUCD, United Cerebral Palsy, the National DD Councils. This is a great opportunity, and there are always a ton of self-advocates that come. So that would be great for the self-advocates in your group. Let's go to the next page. Last year, NDSC developed and rolled out an advocacy toolkit for self-advocates. It is available for free download on our website. So please check it out. Actually, it was developed in collaboration with our Self-Advocate Council, and you know, they did a great job on it, and we hope that would be, you know, a good resource for you to use. Let's go to the next slide. At the NDSC convention, we are going to be offering a training boot camp again this year. We did our first one last year. It was very successful. We have Jawanda Mass coming in working with our policy team on it. Last year we had about 175 people come and 40 self-advocates. We're hoping to get those numbers up even more this year. And it's really like, we like to call it like Advocacy 101. I mean, you know, what is a bill? What are appropriations? And then we talk a little bit about the policy issues, but we highly encourage you to come. You'll be able to register for it when convention registration opens up in March, and there's no additional charge beyond the convention registration. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about advocacy versus lobbying on the next slide. Okay, so as I said before, advocacy is really telling your story, sharing information, and identifying a need for a solution to a problem. Lobbying is a type of advocacy. You can use lobbying to advocate for something, but lobbying is more of a specific attempt to influence public action through some type of written or oral communication, trying to persuade public officials to do something. To pass or defeat some legislation. A 501c3 nonprofit organization can actually do unlimited advocacy that is not lobbying. So in that education vein, you can do as much education as possible. You know, this is the Affordable Care Act, and this is why this is important to our members, and you know why. But once you take that step of, you know, this is why we need to call our elected officials to, you know, keep it intact, then that becomes lobbying. And there is a lobbying that you can do. You just need to you just need to declare it to the IRS, and you need to be careful about how much you're doing. So let's get into the nuts and bolts of that. Okay, so what is lobbying? It's very specifically defined by the IRS as attempting to influence legislation. And legislation is defined as, you know, any action by Congress, the state legislature, your local city council, any type of ballot measures. It typically does not include actions by executive, judicial, or administrative branches. So oftentimes we'll put out a request for comments. We just did one on the public charge rule for the Department of Homeland Security, and we sent out an action alert, you know, saying please submit your comments, and then we always provide sample comments. That would not be counted as lobbying. So, you know, please do it. Hopefully you would be answering the action alerts anyway, but that does not count toward your lobbying count. There's a difference between direct lobbying and grassroots lobbying. Direct lobbying is when you are actually, you know, making an appointment, going and talking to your member or their staff, asking them to do something, to vote a certain way or to introduce a certain bill. Grassroots lobbying is when you are asking your members to do something. So, you know, for instance, reposting our action alert and saying, you know, make calls today, call your elected officials. That is considered grassroots lobbying. And a lot of people get a little concerned about this, but you can and you should do this. You just need to track it and declare it, and I'll tell you a little bit of how you can do that. Let's go to the next page. So just some examples. I think I just gave some, but lobbying by a nonprofit organization, any type of, you know, propaganda. Again, there's a big difference between, you know, a one-pager on a certain issue and how it impacts your members, and then once you add that line of so vote no on this bill number, then it becomes a piece of lobbying material. So often as a nonprofit organization, when I worked on my local level, we would stop just short of doing that because, you know, why you know, have it count toward your lobbying hours. You might as well just put out an informational piece, and then you can do some lobbying in person. So be careful how certain things are written. If you're doing, you know, public testimony, I talked before on the continuum of different advocacy activities that you could do testimony at public hearings or your school board. That actually does count for lobbying, except accept what the IRS calls defensive testimony. And that is if you are testifying, say on behalf of your organization about a policy or proposal that is directly going to negatively impact your organization. So a perfect example of this is if they're slashing the budget for services that your organization provides, you are totally entitled to testify on that in defensive stance, and the IRS will not count that as lobbying, even though you are saying, please vote against this. Any type of correspondence and conferences with legislators and their staff is lobbying. No, it's not lobbying if you're sending a holiday card or an invitation to your Down Syndrome Awareness Walk. But if you're sending an email saying, I'm very concerned about this bill, I want the legislator to vote against it, that would be considered lobbying. And then, as I said, publication of documents advocating a specific legislative action. A lot of times we just get around that in the nonprofit world by just putting out an educational pamphlet or, forum about that. Next slide, going on to some more examples of advocacy versus lobbying. And a lot of times you can really just scale it back to stay within the advocacy category, so it doesn't count as lobbying. So telling a member of Congress how a policy affects you and your group. But once you take that step and ask your member of Congress to vote for or against something or to introduce or amend something, then it becomes lobbying. So remember, I said before, it's really important to make meetings with your staff, to, in your local offices, to get to know them and build relationships. It's always good to have an ask at those meetings, but unless there's a specific ask, where it's something, an urgent matter, you can just do those meetings as informational meetings. This is why we think that IDEA funds are important in our district, and this is how many members, are concerned about it and whatever. Also, social media advocacy, using social media to get out the word about a cause or an issue. So again, reposting an article that, like the article that came out in Forbes the other day about, possible Medicaid block grants. Reposting that is not considered lobbying. You're just getting the word out about it. You're, sharing someone else's resource. If it's accompanied though by a message or, it's in an email that says, this is a problem, please contact your member about this, then that would be considered lobbying. And then same thing I already talked about, meetings and, the difference between explaining your issues and how your members are affected by issues. And then actually asking your members to, support or oppose something. Let's go to the next slide. So lobbying, there are a lot of situations that do count as lobbying, but lobbying by a nonprofit organization is absolutely legal. And as I said before, you should be doing it to further your mission and make your organization more successful. Back in 1934, Congress had first said that, it was legal for nonprofits to lobby. And they came up with this test called a no substantial part test. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's pretty vague, it's subjective, but you want to make sure if you're running a local affiliate group, that the amount of lobbying that you're doing, you're not a professional lobbying firm. So that, small amount of, pushing out action alerts or going to meetings, with staff it's not going to be considered a substantial part of what you're doing and what your organization is doing. There have been some, discrepancies. It hasn't been clear. Then in the 70s, Congress had clarified and created some guidelines for this. And then they also provided another option, and it's another test called the expenditure test. So let's go to the next slide. I'll talk a little bit about the substantial part of activities test. So as a 501c3 nonprofit, you need to decide which tests the IRS should use to consider your lobbying. You can either go under the substantial part of activities test, or you can file a certain form under the expenditure test. I am not an accountant, and I want to put that disclaimer out there. I'm not, in the position to advise you. Most nonprofits I know, especially in the disability space, do go with the expenditure test as opposed to the no substantial activities test, because it's just much easier. Under the no substantial part of activities test, as I said, it is subjective. There is some guidance on the IRS website. about, how to measure it, but there's really no formula, and it depends on the facts and circumstances of each thing, of each, encounter. There's no clear guidance from the IRS on this, so there is some level of uncertainty. And if you have too much lobbying, then you can, you can get penalized with tax penalties, or, at the most extreme case, you can possibly jeopardize your 501c3 status, which we all know you do not want to do. Going to the next slide, the expenditure test, which is, as I said, most organizations I know go with this test. It's just filing a simple form with your tax filings every year. It's called a Section 501H election. And there actually are IRS guidelines on the website. You can look, and on the form itself, there's a mathematical formula to determine the percentage of lobbying versus non-lobbying activities. And it's a sliding scale depending on the budget of your organization. So as an example, if your organization is, its budget is $500,000 or less, which I think probably many of our Down syndrome affiliate groups are, then you can spend up to 20% on lobbying activities. And that, believe me, is really a lot that you can do. It specifically excludes volunteer activities too. So if you have a Hill Day and, you're spending time putting packets together for the Hill Day, none of that counts toward lobbying. So, it's a good idea each month. I don't know if, you do sort of, monthly, either monthly lobbying reports or monthly timesheets, but it's a good idea to just track month by month, of the hours that you worked, approximately how many hours did you spend lobbying? So that would be how many hours, did you spend, talking, meeting with an elected official, sending out an action alert on your listserv, putting an article in your newsletter about, a particular issue and encouraging people to contact their elected official. You don't have to get so specific with it, but if you just track it by month, you're going to see that 20% is really a lot. It's really a high threshold of what you can do. Let's go to the next page. And that is it for my part. I hope that I have not, dissuaded you, and in fact, the contrary, have encouraged you to take more steps toward advocacy and lobbying, both as an individual and an organization, because it is just so important to make our voices heard. And at NDSC, and Lauren will tell you more about NDAC in a minute, but our goal is to make advocacy as easy as possible for you, both as an individual and a group. So we get you all you need, and all we need you to do is, to essentially be the gatekeeper and get it out to your members so that we can increase our voices together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Camp, who is the executive director of the Down Syndrome Association of Delaware, and she'll tell you a bit about what her group's been doing on the lobbying and advocacy angle. Okay, Lauren.
Thanks so much, Heather. I think that was very informative for everybody. So I'm with the Down Syndrome Association of Delaware, and I also work for NDSC, but NDAC has really provided my organization a policy specialization that we would not have had otherwise. I am the only employee for the Down Syndrome Association of Delaware, so I don't have a lot of help, and I appreciate that NDSC does a lot of the research for us and shares us information that really enables our organization to be informed and involved without doing a lot of the legwork and research that would have taken us to get there. So it's a great tool. We definitely utilize the services provided by them, and it allows us to be kind of an expert on the topic without being as heavily involved in the research that the policy team is with NDSC. So I wanted to provide some examples of how the information NDAC and NDSC has provided us has helped our organization grow. These are some pictures of my friend Tommy and his classmates. They traveled to DC for a field trip, and Tommy's mom had reached out to us and said, I really would like to take advantage of us being in DC to meet with some of our U.S. senators, and I was able to help them schedule those meetings thanks to our contacts at NDSC, and we had some talking points available. It was really nice because we prepared Tommy's classmates ahead of time to explain to the state legislators how they valued Tommy being in their class, and it was really touching to hear them share the benefits of inclusion that they personally experienced. And in this instance, we met with one staff member, and then we met with one legislator, but it was really nice to gain the perspective of meeting with both the staff member and the legislator themselves, and the kids thought both was equally as cool. And then also, we are able to stay informed about any congressional briefings that are in DC. We're one of the groups that is near DC, so we're able to travel to those as needed. And some of the congressional briefings I would definitely recommend, even for the groups that are a little further, is that they're a unique experience and allows you to be on the forefront of issues and see policy playing out right in front of you. We are NDAC group members, so we're able to share any of the information that NDAC provides us with our members. And then me as the executive director can go and hear the latest information about what's happening to the Down syndrome community, and then report back to my board and our members about what's going on and what they should be up to date with. For World Down Syndrome Day, our organization was able to set up a tribute on March 21st, and we had 2 self-advocates from our organization go and speak to both the Senate and the House side about their experience of living with Down syndrome and what Rock Your Socks Day was about. And then we also brought socks to all the legislators, so that was really fun. We had one of our vice president board member who was very involved in our legislative committee, and she now actually is a state representative. She was just elected last month, and she now is serving within the House. So it's really been interesting to see how her policy experience within our organization has developed a passion for her. And now we have an ally within the House, and there's also several other House members and Senate members within our state that we've identified that have children with varying abilities, and we are now in contact with them. A lot of them come to our annual dinners. Keep in mind that a lot of your local representatives are also business owners, so a lot of them donate to some of our camps and programming as well, and we're able to maintain that relationship with them, and they come to our walk every year and the annual dinner. And in the past, we've hosted events where we invite all the state legislators to come and speak and meet with our families if they'd like, and that's really been a good way to connect the community with our families. We also were very involved in getting the ABLE Act passed in Delaware. We were able to meet with several of our senators and representatives before it became a law and speak with them about the importance of the issue for our membership and explain to them some more of the technicalities that they may not have been able to understood from a disability perspective before. We're lucky enough that in Delaware we had a really great ABLE task force, and they really wanted us to be involved in that effort. So the collaboration between our group and the state was great, and that was because we had already developed a relationship with them before they needed us, and then when they were looking for people for the task force, we were already in the forefront of their minds. So I believe Heather mentioned this before, you really want to develop a relationship with your legislators before you need their help with something or need them to potentially vote a certain way, instead of asking for something before they know you. A lot of our NDAC members have recently been meeting with new members of their leadership within their state so that they're familiar with who they are when they do need to confront them with an issue or ask them a question or potentially need something. So reach out now and make those relationships known before you reach out to them with a question or something to ask for. Self-advocates are definitely the most effective advocates. As I said, we had 2 self-advocates speak on World Down Syndrome Day to our legislators, and the room was completely silent when they were speaking, and they really held the audience's attention, and their voices were just so powerful, and they really enjoyed being a part of that day and being able to speak to the legislators. We had developed a script for them that I practiced with them in the weeks leading up to it over the phone. And then I, of course, had copies of it printed out. We did it double spaced, did the text a little larger, and then I was there next to them to help them if they had any issues. It was so funny because one of the self-advocates was reading her script, and she has a little bit of a stutter, so she pauses in between words, and I guess one of the legislators assumed that she needed help with the word, and he said it for her, and she said, "I got it, you just need to give me a minute." And she corrected him. So it was a really great learning experience for the legislators, and I think was a lesson learned for him and the other people in the audience that day, to just be patient and wait for the person to finish their thought before interrupting them. And also now we're going to talk about NDAC, which you've heard a lot about in this presentation. And for those of you that are unfamiliar, it stands for National Down Syndrome Advocacy Coalition. So this is a member service of NDSC, and a really great membership benefit with the program. So we're a grassroots advocacy service designed to help educate both individuals with Down syndrome, family members, and any allies about policy issues, and then provide you with tools that you can effectively advocate for. As Heather said, we really try to make this service to make your life easier. We send you action alerts, which take a matter of a minute or two to fill out, and it really makes a big difference. And we're not asking you to write long letters or anything like that. And if you do make a call, we provide you a script, which really has put some of my membership in Delaware at ease with getting involved in advocacy, because they're not as informed about the issues or not sure what to say, and we provide them exactly what they need to do and what number to call and what email to send, and it really takes kind of the brain work out of it and allows you to make a difference easily during your busy lives. We provide training opportunities and resources. We do these awesome quarterly update calls on the legislative agenda, which gives everyone up-to-date news about what's happening recently with all members of our NDSC policy team. So you get to hear from Stephanie and Ricky and Heather and myself about all the different areas and topics that we focus on. And then we do webinars and training opportunities, workshops, and the meetup at the annual NDSC convention where all our NDAC members get together. That's separate from the advocacy training boot camp that we do at the convention. And then you have access to the NDAC Facebook group, which is a great area where a lot of NDAC members share their thoughts on particular articles or talk about some ways that different states are advocating. Some of our NDAC members post pictures when they meet with legislators and how it went and what tips they have for you. And it's just a great way to connect with some of the other members from different states. And we provide very timely information on the latest policy topics. So sometimes our action alerts come out late at night because something just happened. Last year we sent one out on Thanksgiving because the policy world is very quickly moving, so we try to send things out as timely as possible so you all can stay informed and then make those advocacy connections when you have the time and get a chance to check your email. We have two membership types, NDAC members, so those are individuals that have any level of advocacy experience, and those also include self-advocates. We don't have a separate membership for self-advocates. And then NDAC group members, so those are affiliate program subscribers who have opted to join the NDAC program. So NDSC has an affiliate program. NDAC is one of those member benefits being an affiliate program, but the affiliate program also includes access to a wide array of other things, and Tamara, who spoke to us in the beginning, manages that program. So if you're not an NDSC affiliate program subscriber, reach out to her or myself so we can let you know what's involved in that membership and how your group could be involved. NDAC group members do not necessarily have to be Down syndrome related. We have some statewide coalitions or cross-disability groups that also could be NDAC group members as well. And there's a group membership fee involved in that if you're not eligible to be an NDSC affiliate subscriber. So our terms of membership, same as Heather had discussed before, be courteous and professional. You must act in a bipartisan manner when advocating. Members are volunteers, and then it's an indefinite term. You can continue being members as long as you're upstanding NDSC members and your membership dues are current. So there's some information about NDAC membership, and if anyone's unsure if they're NDSC members, feel free to just shoot me an email. I can look up your membership. Also, you have to be a NDSC member in order to attend to the convention. So if you have attended the convention, you've already paid your membership dues, and if you're going to the convention, you're going to have to pay your membership dues anyway. So I just try to remind people of that as well. So for group members, you must be an NDSC affiliate program subscriber. There's no legal relationship between our two groups, and you are not obligated to undertake any of the activities that we line out. It's really providing you with the tools that you can use if you wish. And as Heather had mentioned, we identify a group member representative, and they serve as the point of contact, especially within social media. They're the ones that have access to that Facebook page and would receive our emails that they would then pass on to the group themselves. We currently have 253 NDAC members, and we are looking for advocates in these following states: Alaska, Montana, Rhode Island, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, Washington, and Wyoming. So if you know any Down syndrome parents or advocates in those areas, please let us know, and we would love to have them as a part of NDAC. We're trying to cover all 50 states so that we can say we have an NDAC representative in all 50 states. And then we also have 35 NDAC group members, and those include global, national, statewide, and local group organizations. These are some of our NDAC group members. As you can see, there's quite a few, and you'll recognize a lot of names that have gotten involved with NDAC and used our policy tools that we've provided them. So we hope that your group could potentially join and work with us in advancing some of the policy agendas and providing you with tools so that your group can be informed on a legislative side. So these are the links to join, NDAC membership application and the group membership application. Both applications take a matter of 5 minutes or less to fill out. They're not lengthy, it just provides us some basic information about you and what topic areas you may be interested in being involved in. For example, if you had a passion about education policy, then you could put that in there or something like that. And if you have any questions, that's my email address. As I said, I can check your membership status for you. And that's a link to read a little bit more about the NDAC program and fill out the application if you're interested. These are some links to our monthly policy and advocacy newsline that our policy team writes every month. It's very informative, outlines all of the latest policy topics that you should be aware of. The action alerts, those are what come out in a really timely manner at any time when we are notified of something that we think you should be informed about quickly. And then our Facebook group is very popular. We're trying to get to 6,000 likes, so give us a like. We're almost there. And then our Twitter page as well. We also interact with that a lot, and we're able to interact with a lot of the legislators within Twitter as well. And that's my email and Heather's. Thanks so much, everybody, for having us. Heather, do you have anything you want to close out with?
No, I'm sure we have some questions, and I just wanted to thank everybody for taking that initial step for advocacy. You know, sometimes it's hard to get started and seems overwhelming, but there really is so much that you can do as an individual and as a group leader, and we're here to help you along the way.
And so at this point, I'm going to jump in and say, if you do have a question, we've only had one question come in throughout the presentation, and it was about the handout. So I did send that out to everyone, but the handout will come in an email, follow-up email with a link to watch the recording or share the recording with someone else in your group if you'd like to. But if you do have a question, now would be the time to type those in. Everyone feels perfectly confident in all the information.
or we're going to get a bunch of emails later.
That's okay, right?
Yes.
And you may want to rewatch it and especially watch the pieces. I know that, there's, so I'm getting, I apologize, guys, but I'm getting, I've had some crazy stuff going on with my computer, and so but we've got a great presentation. That's awesome, and thank you for doing that. That was one of the comments. But if you have a question, now's the time. We do get a lot of questions from organizations who have a board member, or maybe it's their full board, that are under the impression that they can't do anything legislatively to advocate. And as you heard Heather say, that's simply not true. You just have to mind your P's and Q's.